$3.7 billion worth of child support is owed to parents, single parents in Australia alone. 85% of single parents are women. About 90% of them are being paid child support because they're usually the lower earner.
Jane Farquhar is a family law solicitor at Lighthouse Law Group. In this episode, she shares her own story of divorce, financial reset, and how she now helps other women navigate separation, finances, and the legal system.
It's like $100,000 at least to go to all the way to a final hearing.
Wow.
If you want the judge to make the decision for you. If you are married and you're thinking about it now and you're not already in control of what's going on in the finances, make sure you find out what's going on. Definitely empower yourself with information.
Jane, welcome to The House Story.
Hey, Tate. Thank you for having me.
Jane, I'm very excited to just go backwards with you maybe and find out a little bit about your history. And so maybe you can take me through your timeline.
Wow, okay. So I was born in Melbourne and I guess we lived a pretty normal life back then. But when I turned 6, my dad got a job in Singapore as a general manager of a book publishing firm. So we moved to Singapore. We lived there for 6 years. And anyone that knows anything about expat life will know that it's pretty fancy. So we used to get chauffeur driven to school in a Mercedes, like all these like little kids, like
Yep.
4 of us got piled into the car by mum. Off we went to school. We had a live-in maid. My mum basically didn't have to do anything except organise dinner parties and go to golf for 6 years. And I have these beautiful memories of Singapore because Singapore is so lush and colourful and, you know, it's really hot. But I have these beautiful memories of my parents having dinner parties. My dad loved jazz music and he used to love Latin jazz music. And this memory I have is of the music, the tinkling of glasses and the laughter like would come up the stairwell at night when my parents were having these dinner parties. And they had this beautiful life. And I think for myself and my 3 brothers, like we were obviously surrounded by books because my dad worked for this publishing firm. And it formed these early memories of like joy and happiness and security. And unfortunately, then we had to go back to Victoria, which was fine, except I know like there's whispers in the family that the man my dad used to work for, Joe Chok Kim, I think his name was, he'd been doing some dodgy stuff in Singapore and we had to leave in a hurry. So that's a bit of dirt in the family. We had to go back. But it changed all of us so much because we'd lived this life of like the schools we went to were amazing. And then we got thrust back into living in Victoria in Frankston. But those early memories of being children living in this beautiful city, it opens your mind up. You know, and this was in the 70s and families, you know, no one really did things like that back then. And I think we became global citizens early on. We became more aware of the world around us. So we came back to Victoria as very changed children and as a family. So that then changed the way all of us, my 3 brothers and I, did everything. Like we all became very, I think, you know, we've talked about this, my 3 of them were all like overachievers, and that's because of my dad.
And so finishing school in Melbourne?
So nearly finished it in Melbourne and then we ended up in Sydney because my dad got transferred again, and then finished school in this strange school at the back of Campbelltown. Don't ask me why. My parents still don't know why we ended up back in a school in Campbelltown. But same thing again, you know, we all just ended up whatever school we went to. And I kind of have this argument at work with people sometimes about different schools that you go to because you know what it's like in Sydney? It's very cliquey around which school you go to. Does it make a difference if you send your kid to a really fancy school and pay all that money or not? Because if they're really smart, they're going to rise above it and move on and be, you know, hard workers anyway.
And then did you end up going to university after you graduated or what happened? Take us through the next steps.
Yeah, so I actually did. So I went to Sydney Uni and a couple of things. I had wanted from about year 10 to be a fashion designer. And I'm essentially a very, very creative person. and I loved fashion. And when I first finished school, I tried to get into, it was called East Sydney Tech back then. Don't know if it's still called that. Didn't get in, and I moved to London for a couple of years. I had dropped out of uni by that time, and then I came back home and started making clothes and selling them at markets. I went to study, and then I worked in the fashion industry for about, I think, 8 years.
Nice.
So that was the early stages.
Yeah, and then take me forward. At some point, you end up finding a partner.
Yes. So I got married when I was 33, and I ended up being a stay-at-home mum with 2 little kids, and I didn't work for 10 years. And my ex-husband, he earned quite a lot of money. He was a CFO of a large pharmaceutical company, so I didn't need to work, and he travelled a lot. He was always away, and I guess it was a very privileged position to be in, but I was also a little bit stupid. In hindsight, I can look back now and I think, oh my God, what was I doing? I didn't even know. When we got divorced, I didn't even know how much milk cost. Like, I really was just terrible. And I now realise all those mistakes that I made, and it's one of the things that, we'll get to it, but it's part of the things that I then tell my clients, or I try and make clear to my clients now when I see them. But yeah.
Yeah. So take me through that process, because I think that's really a big part of your journey.
Yeah, so that's the start of like this major part of my changing my life. We were in the middle of getting divorced, and we were living in Singapore, and I walked into this little bookstore and I picked up this book called The Magic, and it literally was magic. I think it's a Rhonda Byrne book, and I started doing the 28 days of gratitude and mindfulness and meditations, and it just absolutely flipped my life upside down. Like it created this energy around me that meant things, people, money would just come to me. You know, sometimes I felt like money would drop out of the sky. So that was the start of all the changes, of challenging myself to try and do something different with my life. So I ended up, in the middle of divorce, got this book. Then I was like, I hadn't worked for 10 years, and I was pretty sure there was no fashion businesses that were going to employ a 40-something mum that hadn't worked as a fashion designer like I was. And I also wasn't passionate about it anymore. I was like, nah, loved it then, but I don't want to do it again. So I was looking around, and it was a conversation I was having with my dad one day. And he said, we were looking at a letter that my solicitor had written, and I was saying to him, God, this is a really shitty letter. You know, I could have done that. And I thought, and he said to me, well, you could. Why don't you? And from there, like, sparked this idea. So I started investigating, and I thought maybe I'll be a teacher, because I'd been working as a teacher's aide. Looked into that, but it just didn't grab me. And even though law is so hard, and I thought, this is nuts. I can't do this. This is going to be too hard. Things kept happening, like, I'd go to the letterbox and there'd literally be like a letter from a uni offering me a place to do law. And I'd be like, oh my God, okay, I get it, universe, I can hear you, you know, you're telling me this very clearly. So from there, I enrolled in university online to start studying. So that was the beginning of like 6 years of studying at university to become a lawyer. Can't believe I did it now, honestly.
Yeah.
But once you're in, you can't stop. Not that I wanted to, but like it was tough. It was really tough.
It's a really big step to take at that age, and I suppose coming out of a separation to then go and decide to study law.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have advice for someone that may be in a similar position, maybe navigating or in the middle of a divorce, that you would be telling them to do?
God, so much, honestly. I need a handbook. Well, I've actually got a few, but definitely, and there's a few things they have to do, is empower yourself with information. Read, watch, listen to, there's some podcasts that you can listen to by lawyers, which are fantastic. There's one that I always tell my ladies to listen to. Go on the court website and see what the process and the steps are. Like, talk to people. Don't listen to your crazy old aunt telling you to do whatever, but get information, like empower yourself. Start to learn how to do everything. Lots of women like me, I didn't know how to pay for stuff. I didn't know how direct debit worked. I had to set up bills. I had to go and buy a car. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I haven't done this for like years. Make sure you become independent. Make sure you oversee your finances like within your marriage. I should have been doing that too. If you are married and you're thinking about it now and you're not already in control of what's going on in the finances, make sure you find out what's going on so that you know what he might be like not telling you when you divorce, because that's the other thing I see, that men often hide things. They don't divulge everything if they can possibly get away with. So definitely empower yourself with information and do what I did. Go and work on gratitude, mindfulness. You actually need to do that. And a lot of people are, I don't have time for myself. But that's ultimately the most important thing. If you're not doing well mentally and physically, who's going to look after your children? You need to keep it together, everything. So unfortunately, when you're a single mom, it's all about you and keeping it together to make sure your kids are okay. Most single mums, that's their focus anyway. But sometimes there's such a mess if they've just come out of a relationship that's abusive, whether it's physical, emotional, financial. They don't know what's what anymore.
So you said you did quite a bit of work on yourself exiting the marriage. Why do you feel like you didn't do that during the marriage?
I guess I became lazy, I think. I didn't need to. When we were living in Singapore again, like I used to go for lunch and get my nails done. And I had like a really lovely group of friends and I kick myself now. And the other thing is when you're married, you don't want to give up. We had children together. No one gets divorced because they're having a good time. Like it has to be pretty bad for a woman to walk away from a marriage. I do see a pattern where if a man walks away, usually it's because he's walking away with somebody. It's a lot easier. For a woman, it's really hard to walk away unless it's really abusive because there's children and we all want to just be happy and get on with our lives. It's not like we want to blow it all up. There's no fun in that at all.
What's something really common that you're seeing? You touched on you're seeing a lot of patterns. Tell me about a few of them.
I see that women are just so disadvantaged by the system, by the way society works, by the way the courts work and the government. Like it just feels like it's not fair. And I know I hate to say that to a man because I know it's not all men that are creating havoc, obviously. But, with the rates of domestic violence and femicide, it's creating such a vibe out there of, women have actually had enough. But I'm kind of seeing it feels like it's going a bit too far. There's like this man hatred. And it's deeply disappointing. But it is because, and I see it on the ground, I see women come in and they don't have any money and child support is weaponised by men. Quite often when there's children, I was looking this up the other day, $3.7 billion worth of child support is owed to parents, single parents in Australia alone.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
No, that's huge.
And that's just what the Child Support Agency knows about. So there's probably more.
Much more, yeah.
So 85% of single parents are women. So, and then of that group, about 90% of them are being paid child support because they're usually the lower earner. It's a pattern. So we're disadvantaged. I call it the motherhood penalty. It's a bit out there. You can look it up, but it is something that I see all the time. Women don't get paid as much as men, but that's not just because of the industries they're in. It's often because they choose to work part-time. If you've got children, we choose to work part-time, so we have more flexibility to pick up our kids, drop them off. Then we don't get paid all that superannuation. So, and if we're not working our way up the corporate ladder, if, God forbid, you get divorced and then you try and regroup, you can't catch up. It's nearly impossible because you've got children. even now, like I see most of the women I have, most of my clients have children, and child support for a couple of clients is such a big issue. One husband hasn't paid child support since last year.
And why is that? Why are they not forced to? The system doesn't support them.
So the child support agency is meant to collect it, but and this is another pattern. Men that have their own businesses are like, oh, not making any money anymore. You know, the business is going really badly, and meanwhile they're getting bags of cash. You know, and they're stashing it, and they're getting away with it, so it can't be traced. So that is a big issue, and I know the child support agency kind of does their best, but the way the system is set up, it's not working for women at all. So it's a big issue. I don't actually know how that can be solved.
What are common things that you see that you're like, you guys need to work on that or focus on that?
So like in a relationship where they're still together, I always think, and I say this to some of the young colleagues at work, if you're in a marriage and you have young children, you absolutely always have to work as a team. When you have young children, doesn't matter who's working or what's going on, you both need to be working in a team to look after the children. And I also tell ladies to keep working, don't stop. As much as you would love to stay home with your children, it creates an imbalance, I believe, within the relationship. And that's kind of what happened to me. We both lacked respect for what the other person did in the relationship. I didn't respect my ex-husband for like working this big business, managing Asia Pac. Like seriously, when I think about it now and the responsibility he had, I think, wow, I should have probably respected him a bit more for that. But I was so deep in the parenting of these small children, not sleeping enough, or just the drudgery of looking after them, that I thought I was hard done by. It's something that I think if you've got young children, you absolutely need to make sure there's teamwork. And sorry, ladies, you can't stop working. You have to continue to work so that if you ever get divorced in the future, you're going to have enough super to retire on, because that's another demographic of women retiring in poverty in their 50s. Apparently, it's like this huge area of homelessness is in women who are in their 50s or 60s who are retiring because they don't have enough super.
Wow.
So, and the government, I think, are trying to change that at the moment. They're trying to, if you have maternity leave and you stay at home, you're still being paid your superannuation. I've got to actually look into a bit more, but I'm pretty sure they're trying to fix this broken system that disadvantages women. But I'm always fascinated by people that are married or in a relationship. So my younger brother has been married for 20 years, and I'm always like, are they holding hands? Yeah, they are. They look happy. It's because they were always together as a team. Even though my little brother is a doctor, she's a pharmacist. They were always busy, but they always worked together. And one of my young colleagues at work, he's got a little 1-year-old. He works. His wife is actually at home at the moment. She's a pharmacist. He's a lawyer. But they work together as a team, even though it's a bit different at the moment. And I know she's going to go back to part-time work, and they just work it out. So I find it fascinating to see how people's relationships work. I'm always a bit like, I can spot like a bad one from like 20 paces.
I bet.
When you see people and you're like, oh, they look miserable at dinner. Like, oh, I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah. So what's the optimal balance? Should both partners be working 2-3 days a week and then looking after kids the rest? Or do you feel like it's better for...
I don't know what that answer is, to be honest. I feel like both parties, that's what I call them at work, they both need to be working all the time. And that's mainly because for women, if they don't continue to work, as I said, they fall off the career ladder. They don't have enough money to retire on.
Is it more than that, and maybe also about like having a sense of purpose and also having a sense of challenge in your day-to-day?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with being a mother. I was a stay-at-home mum. Sure. It's beautiful, and you're lucky if you can do it for a while. But as I said, I think it creates a relationship dynamic that's not, it doesn't seem to work unless I guess you get together and are, you actually say to each other, hey, well done. I really respect and appreciate that you go to work. And I really respect and appreciate that you're at home looking after the kids, because I know it's hard. There's a whole story about women are at home and it's so easy, and men think that, they come home and they're like, what have you done all day? And the house is in a mess. It's, I think there's got to be respect for what each person does. But my advice as a family law solicitor, though, is that women should not stop working, as hard as that is, because, God, it goes on forever.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think it's so important now as well, to also find purpose outside of just having a family, and also having a big friendship group and things like that, which I feel like I see quite often. But I suppose I come from a different angle because I'm a business owner. But I certainly feel like I see that quite a lot. Yeah.
I think the older I've gotten, I've realised how important your friends are, and maintaining friendships, because it's not that easy when you're older to just make new friends.
Yeah.
When you've got little kids, you make friends through their school, school, and even early on at playgroup and stuff. But as you get older, you appreciate I've got a group of girlfriends. We see each other nearly every weekend. Everyone's got really busy, important jobs. One girl runs a whole government department. I'm in awe of her.
Wow.
And they're just so down to earth. And we all just banter about stuff, and it can be anything. And then we all go home. I feel like I've been on a really good date sometimes with this group of women.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is fantastic. The other thing I realised as I've gotten older, though, is, and it kind of sounds a bit sad and a bit self-reflective, but I realised that you've basically, even if you've got children, family, friends, you're actually on your own. You are on your own. You've really, that's it. You're there until you die. And it's not to sound like doomsday, but it's also I just came to that realisation that you can't really rely on anybody, unless you're my parents. They were together for 63 years. And as I said, my dad passed away a few months ago, and it's like my mum's arm's been cut off. But you don't see marriages like that anymore. People don't stay together for 63 years. They were like the yin and yang. And it's so unusual to see. But and I feel bad for her that Dad's not here anymore, and I think she's lost in the world. But sadly, that's the realisation I came to, that you're actually on your own. Even though you might create this life with family and friends, and they're all extra blessings. And if you can keep them all together, even better.
Could I ask a big favour? If you've taken any value out of this episode, please like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference for us.
And if I'm in a relationship where I feel that maybe it's not right, when is the right time to start exploring separation?
Gosh, I actually had a lady came in to see me yesterday. It was kind of a similar question. And she started to tell me her story, and I say sometimes you've got to talk it out to work it out. It's kind of a daggy thing, but it just literally, once you start to tell your story, sometimes we worked it out, her and I, what she needed to do, which was basically to start getting everything together, because there was all these things she told me that I went, oh wow, you need to action this soon. Don't wait. But, it depends on the situation. So if you are in a relationship, you're not happy, I would definitely think you should try counselling first. If there's a way to save it, because it's not that easy to find somebody else. It really isn't. It's hard to find somebody that you love and get on with. And if at some point in your relationship you did love and care for this person deeply, and you think it's worth fighting for, I would definitely do the counselling first. Don't give up.
I feel like it's probably a really traumatic or emotional discussion to have with a partner, to sit down and say, hey, I want to go my separate ways.
Yes. And it often doesn't go very well. You would think, though, that there had been some discussions along the way that have led to that point. So it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. But if you're wanting to have that discussion, there's no easy way about it, is there? There's definitely, you can just be as kind as you can. If it's a surprise, if it's a new topic, it's not going to be an easy one. I guess you've just got to approach it with kindness and empathy.
I mentioned earlier that I feel like I hear a lot more about prenups, and I think they're called BFAs here.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on them for young couples, but also older couples?
Yeah, so I actually do quite a lot of them for older couples who are going into like their second marriage, or they're about to move into a de facto with a partner and they've been married before. I also have lots of young people that come to me who have property, and I'm like, well done for being able to afford something in Sydney, because it's so hard, like it's so expensive. So I'm happy to draft up, yes, they're called prenups in America, we call them financial agreements here. They specify within the agreement how you can protect, that unit that you might have inherited it, or you might own half of it with your sister or your brother or whatever. You get to corral your separate property, it's called, so that he keeps his stuff and you keep yours. And it basically says if you separate, off you go on your merry way, and you keep your stuff. So it could be superannuation in there, bank accounts. Property is the main one, of course, that people want to protect, because if they haven't got a prenup, then you're going to have to go through the court system and negotiate it. So it can be obviously more difficult if the court's involved. But if you've already got a piece of paper that says, well, hang on, we already said this is how we were going to do it, fantastic. It's really good for older couples who have older children. So they've worked out with their new spouse how they want, who to get what. And that's usually drafted with a person's will. So the will it's like double bandages, like you're taping this bit and this bit. So the will says she's to get this, and it may be a piece of property that's like separate. And in the financial agreement, it says you keep your stuff, you keep that stuff, but you also get to have that as well. So the adult kids know who's going to get what. Otherwise, there's a big shit fight at the end when that person passes away. So, yes, financial agreements, they've kind of got a bad rap, but I think they're like kind of back in style, and I've been drafting them a lot. And I love it when I say young people who are doing that, because they're setting themselves up. They're setting up their future selves for not having an argument. Like, it's a good thing. It means they can stay out of the family court and not pay legal fees to me, which is fine.
Maybe you can just shed some light on what the process is for going through separation, because I know that for you're big on female empowerment. And so for an individual that might be going through this now and wanting a resource to listen to or to understand the process, maybe you can shed some light on it.
So I will do a little shout out to, I don't know them personally, but I do often tell my clients to listen to, it's called the Divorce Course. It's a podcast by a mother-daughter team. So the mother's like, she might be in her 60s. She's the lawyer. And then her daughter has 3 children, and she got divorced. So they're called Laura and Lynn on the Divorce Course. And they have all these amazing podcasts. They're Australian, and they just tell it like it is. And they have so many good podcasts about all areas of law. Like, they'll go into a deep dive about child support. They'll do another podcast on narcissistic spouses and control during separation. So I tell clients to listen to those. And when they do, I can tell the difference, because they come back to me and they're like, oh, I listened and I know. Can you tell me, like, they kind of understand the process, because it's quite going through the separation process, through the family court, it is quite, like, there's a bit to it. Like, you can do it yourself, definitely, but I think it would be quite hard unless you'd have to do a lot of research and know a lot about it before you'd be able to do it yourself.
What are the steps?
So first thing you need to do is you need to organise all of your paperwork. So you need to, they call it financial disclosure. So each party has to have all of their financial bank statements and superannuation statements. Each person has to provide that. So that then forms what's called a balance sheet. So between the two solicitors, so I'm assuming that both parties, the husband and wife or the boyfriend, girlfriend, have got a solicitor, and you're trying to work it out via negotiation. You're trying to what's called make consent orders. Everybody has to consent to what's in these orders. So those agreements are based on what you negotiate on. So if you've got a property, you might be like, okay, we're going to sell the property and you get half of the proceeds, each of you, and then you both keep your super and your bank accounts and whatever, and you go on your merry way. And in the consent orders, that's literally what is reflected. It says within 30 days the property will be sold and the money dispersed between parties, and then all the other minutiae is listed in those consent orders. That's literally what you're aiming to do, which sounds so straightforward. Why does it take so long?
It does sound very straightforward.
And it actually is, and it should be. There's 2 forms you have to submit to the court. A registrar oversees it and goes, okay, and he stamps it, and then it's done. The orders are granted. But to get all the information together, and if 2 lawyers are involved, it should be okay. But sometimes I have found, I don't like to say anything bad about other solicitors, but some firms do deliberately make things take longer because they want to rack up fees. I'm like, I don't need to rack up fees. I've already got so many people to look after. And that's not the focus of what I do or our firm either. Like, I can safely say my boss, Pete, he's all about like helping people and getting the best result. And that's what we aim for all the time. But unfortunately, that's what happens. Sometimes other solicitors don't make it easy. So that is what the focus is. When you come and see a solicitor, you're trying to get consent orders made, which is an agreement. It's like a contract between you as to who gets what. And if, though, you can't agree, that's when you end up in court. And I think that's what everyone sees is going to court, and you're in front of a judge and the judge makes the decision for you. Yes, if you can't agree, you have to go to mediation first. Often things settle at mediation and you come to an agreement, which is fantastic. That's my best day. But if you still can't, then they say, I'm going to file in court, it's just the term, to start proceedings. And that's when you get on the slippery slope and you start handing out money left, right and centre because it costs a lot of money. I'm like, please don't do that. It's like $100,000 at least to go to all the way to a final hearing.
Wow.
If you want the judge to make the decision for you. And all along the way, there's like multiple steps, things that you have to do, documents you need to draft. So that's where the money comes in because lawyers charge by the hour and by 6-minute increments. So that's the other issue.
So if I've always been curious, if I'm in a situation where I don't have that $100,000 to maybe spend on legal fees, what happens then?
I know, it's terrible. So generally, if you are really broke, you can get legal aid. They may help you, but it's really hard to get legal aid.
What is legal aid for those that don't know?
So legal aid is a government body that helps people who can't afford legal fees to be able to give them aid by providing a lawyer or who might be able to help you with documents. And I don't know exactly how they go about it. I just know if you're going to see legal aid, they're going to help you for free. And there's a whole lot of questions you have to answer about what your assets are. So I think if you own a property, you can't get legal aid.
Okay. So it's really designed for those that maybe don't have the financial means.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting. Looking back over, how many years have you been practicing now?
So 5.
Yeah. I think my understanding is that the process in this country to go through divorce is complex and difficult, but can be easy if both parties are willing to go through it easily. Is that right?
Yeah. If you haven't what they call an amicable settlement, which is when you agree and those consent orders can be drafted, it can be really straightforward.
So like, I suppose, can someone wrap up a relationship legally in a matter of weeks, or is that usually a long process?
If there's property involved,
Yep.
I always recommend that you have consent orders drafted because I say it literally draws a line in the sand, and that's where your ties to that other person and your property is severed. So that means you can go on your way. If you don't draft those orders, if they're not granted by the court, that person can potentially come back later and be like, I want another slice of that. And it happens occasionally.
Wow.
So you've got to protect yourself, particularly if there's a property involved and you want to, if you want to keep it, or if you want to be paid out a lump sum of money. So those consent orders are worth their weight in gold. They actually are. They're going to set you up to protect your future self.
Is there a part of the family law you'd love to see reformed?
Look, the court have been trying to implement new systems. So, for example, the first time I'm in court, I'll come in front of what's called a judicial registrar. And they're like a baby judge. And they're basically there, like they're setting meetings. They're like, okay, why are you here today, Miss Farquhar? What's going on with your client? And the other person's client solicitor is there as well. So, and it's all online. Since COVID, it's all online. So it's actually much easier and cheaper. I don't need to leave the office. I don't have to charge my client to travel anywhere. So they'll say, okay, what's going on? Has your client already done this, this, and this? And has their client already done this, this, and this? Because if you haven't, you need to do it. And they set up a timetable. Like, it's kind of crazy. That's the legal process. That's what they're trying to do. And if you go off and you don't do all those things and you come back in front of them, they're like, why are you here again? Like, literally, I've seen them tell people off, like, why are you here?
Jeez.
Or Miss So-and-so, why haven't you done anything? And Miss Farquhar's had to do it. Like, I've literally been in court, which is like that. So they're trying to get us through the system and our clients through as quickly as possible with minimal fuss. And what they do is they set up mediations as well, court-ordered mediations, because they don't want it to go to all the way to a final hearing either. Before every court appearance, we have to file what's called a cost notice. And that cost notice will give an estimate of costs to our client to go all the way to a final hearing. We have to give it to our client. We have to give it to the court. So they'll see what we've already charged, which can be a little different depending on which firm you're using. I've seen some that are like, oh my God. So they see that and they'll say to the client, you understand what's going on. Like, they'll talk to them. The client doesn't normally have to talk, but I know they're trying. Like, they are trying to implement new systems. The issues I see, and I don't do AVOs. So they're dealt with in the local court. I see issues around domestic violence and how the police deal with AVOs. I've had clients that have come to me as part of their whole family law matter. There's domestic violence, and I'm like, oh, that's really bad. You need to go to the police station and you need to report that. And if they go in and they don't talk to a domestic violence officer, they talk to like Constable Buggerlugs, he's like, oh, really? Like, that's not so bad. Like, I've heard clients tell me that. Like, they're not dealing with it. So I think the police are trying to. So then that goes to the local court, and then they try and deal with the AVOs as well. That's all a bit of a flawed system. But as I said, I don't do AVOs. I just know that often all of my matters these days, there's an element of domestic violence, and quite a few of them have AVOs as well to protect the wife and sometimes to protect the children as well. So that's like a whole... So, I think the family court are actually doing a pretty good job.
Actually, how do you stay grounded? Because, I assume for you as an individual, aside from work, how do you possibly stay grounded?
Yeah. So last year, I actually had a pretty tough year. And it's something that, lawyers don't really talk about a lot. And family lawyers, there's a whole big thing for burnout. And I did have some pretty full-on things going on with clients. And I'm a very empathetic person, which is one of the reasons, I'm doing this. I found when I was studying for all those years, I used to volunteer in legal centres, and I literally felt like I was high on endorphins when I used to go in and help at Salvo's Legal. So Salvo's have a legal firm. I used to volunteer there. I used to feel so happy, and it's like this thing you chase. And so it kind of made me realise while I was studying, doing the volunteer work, yes, it's keep going, Jane. Like, that's the right thing for you to do. But being empathetic leaves you open. It leaves you open to be too in line with what your client's going through, and aligning myself with the trauma that they were going through it took an emotional toll on me. And I ended up speaking to the Law Society had organised a really nice young Asian psychologist, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm thinking I need another lady to like talk to me about my feelings and my, how I'm dealing with these clients. But he like smashed it out, and his pragmatic approach was like, Jane, you need to like stop being so empathetic. Like, you cannot do this. You're going to burn out, and you're not going to be able to do this anymore. And I was like, okay, that resonates. But, he said to me, you can't be empathetic. You need to be sympathetic. So, that's terrible. I feel really bad for you. But he said you can't on a daily basis be empathetic like that anymore. Otherwise, you're going to that'll be it. You'll be done. So, last year I went through that, and it was really tough. And I found that I learnt a lot from going through that. And other lawyers don't really talk about it. And I was trying to tell, my boss and colleagues, trying to like normalize it. Hey, I spoke to a psychologist yesterday about, that thing or those people. But generally, I try not to stay in the office too late. Some weeks are better than others, I might be there till 10 o'clock. If I've got court the next day or in a couple of days and I'm preparing documents. And it's that quietness. I'm a night owl. I'm a night owl for good. Yeah. All those years of study just set me up. Like, I can't not stay up. If I'm up till like midnight, it's like I flip and I'm like, I could be up all night so easily. So I do stay at work till late when I do need to get stuff done. But I try on the days that I'm not there late, I go to Pilates. And on the weekend, I do sometimes do work, but I make sure I catch up with my family and my friends. It's like, if I don't...
So important.
It's so important to maintain those connections. And like I said, with my girlfriends, it's like the best feeling when I leave there, a download, whatever's going on. We all check in on each other. And it's like the best counselling ever.
Yeah.
So, and the other last thing, my colleagues and I, we're always, we work, then we'll walk out of our offices and we call it the hallway conference, and we like tell like some crazy thing that's happening. And then one of my colleagues, he's so funny, honestly. He's the funniest guy I've ever met. He's a bit quirky, but I love him. He makes everything funny if it needs to be. Like, I might be telling him something really dire, and then he'll just crack a joke, and then I'm okay. And then I can go back to work.
What do you wish you could tell clients that you never get an opportunity to say?
Oh, yeah. This is a tough one. Look, those clients, and love them, the ones that aren't really quite ready to see a lawyer are the ones that I think, you really need to go and see a psychologist, go and see a counsellor, go and see a divorce coach. And I do try and do that sometimes. I have had people on the phone and I've said, go and do that, and then when you're ready. But sometimes people come in and see me and they're not ready, and I want to be able to tell them, please, don't go off and do this and then come back. But, they're like, I need your advice now. I want to get this done. I'm like, okay. And the people that ring and email all the time, love them too, but you're racking up fees for yourself. And I try and explain that to them. I do say that to people sometimes, because I feel terrible. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm not doing it to make a lot of money. Yes, I've got my own bills to pay, but I'm not doing it to make money. But I do have to say to them sometimes, you're going to have to stop ringing me. I love to chat to you, but I've just actually charged you like for, half an hour, which is 5 billable units. And I charge, my boss charges $450 an hour for my time. So, yeah, you're going to get a bill with that on it. And you normally it's stuff they need to know, but they probably didn't need to ring me 5 times. So that's just the minutiae of dealing with people. But the big picture is get your act together, get empowered with information, do the work, change your life, go and do what I did, go and find a book about gratefulness. It's the absolute answer to everything. Being grateful changes the energy around you. It shifts everything so that it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Money drops out of the sky, people ring you, things turn up, opportunities just present themselves. So, but you've got to do the work. You can't just expect it to happen.
Jane, I feel like that is a great place to end this. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been super insightful. So big thank you.
Thanks, Tate. Thanks for having me.